Today we're going to learn how to add texture to our watercolors, to liven them up and add feeling to our paintings.
Make sure that you understand you're the one who gives my life color. There is no one other.
Hi everyone, I'm Elisa, the artist behind Elisa Laporte Art, and today's lesson is going to be on textures. Areas of flat color, especially in the foreground of your painting, can seem very bland. So by adding texture, you can liven them up and bring feeling to your paintings. Trying out different ways to make textures with your watercolors will help you know what textures you will need for your painting. There's splattering, salt, blossoms, among other techniques. We will learn all of these and more in our demo. Let's get to it! As you practice your textures, it is a good idea to get your piece of paper and you can section off in any shape or design that you want, so you can try out different things and know what they do. The first technique we're going to talk about today is spattering. Spattering is a very unpredictable method of applying paint and often reserved for the final stages of a painting. You want to practice spattering on a separate piece of paper before you actually start to do it on your painting. I will show you with a red here. So you want quite a bit of water with your paint. If it's too thick, then it's just gonna drop in clumps onto your painting. And if it's too liquid, then you're just gonna get beads and they will kind of be really big and they will dominate your painting. So I'm going to cover the rest of my papers here. So I'm going to spatter here. You can see it kind of goes everywhere, and depending on which direction you point your brush will depend on your spatter. As you can see, I prefer to be a little bit closer to my painting. I have a little bit more control of where my paint actually goes. Another way of spattering, say you want to create some trees or bushes, but you want them to be varying colors of yellow and green. So I'm going to actually paint on it yellow, dry it. Always make sure you cover what parts of your painting or even your desk and area you don't want spattered, because as you can see, the paint will spatter and go elsewhere. So make sure you cover up anything you want to be left alone. Okay, I did dry this with a blow dryer for purposes of doing this quickly and to show you what I would do. Normally I would wait until it air dries. So we're going to use a resist, our liquid masking fluid, to create a different kind of spatter. So I'm going to spatter this on and then we're going to paint over top of it, and it will give us a great effect for doing trees or bushes, or I even did it for the bubbles in one of my paintings called Swimming with the Stars. I was able to leave some white and then I wanted some that were different colors, so I spattered some on top of the paint, let it dry, and then painted over top of it so they were varying colors. So I'm going to just dip my brush in there. You're just going to do the same thing. You're just going to spatter. You can even use a toothbrush depending on what kind of spatter you want. You might not be able to see some of this right now. Once it's dry and we paint over top of it, you'll be able to see that better. This is a wonderful way to create textures in your painting using your liquid masking fluid. Now this kind of spattering up here can be used for trees, it could be used for flowers that are maybe more in the distance. It could also be used as flecks of different colors of sand on a beach. So there's lots of different things you can use this for. I'm going to get a smaller brush. So the size of your brush will determine your splatter as well. I want kind of a blue-green. You can kind of see the yellow poking through. That's where the masking fluid was. Also going to use some sap green. And this is a very fun, relaxing way to play with your watercolors and allow you to get used to your colors, what they do, but also it will allow you to practice with your textures so you understand what they can do. I haven't gone over that because it's still a little wet there. Try and quickly go over that. It'll be a little different, but... And I could even go over with my masking fluid another time if I wanted to, and create another layer so that I would have different layers of my paint. We'll let this one dry as we are moving on to our next texture. The next texture we're going to work on is adding salt. You will add your paint first. I'll show you with two different colors. So I have two different kinds of salt here. I have a kosher salt and I have a table salt. And the different salts will create different sizes of texture. So you just sprinkle it on, and you're going to leave it on until it is dry. Completely dry. So you want to add the salt while the paint is still wet, and the salt will absorb and soak up any excess water or moisture in the area. So salt adds a distinct texture, and it will change slightly depending on the size of the salt, and it can be used for sand or a water effect, old stone walls, rocks, and areas of foliage. Sometimes playing with it can happen by trial or error, seeing how quickly or how much time you need to wait in between when you put your paint down and when you add your salt. You can see that this one here is already starting to absorb some of the paint around it, and you're getting a snowflake effect. This next one we'll work on while this one is drying is creating backgrounds. Now I know in some of my other videos I said we don't want to create backgrounds or blossoms, but sometimes you do want to, and you want to do it on purpose to create a texture, whether it be for a floral or water or clouds, whatever texture you're trying to achieve. Just play with it. This is why we want to practice working with our paints, testing out different textures. So now I have my paint on. I'm gonna let it dry for just a couple seconds, and then to create that back run or those blossoms, I'm going to take fresh water and drop it on. So you can actually just tap it on or drop it, and you see how it's creating a texture. And sometimes we do want that. When we have a flat wash, you don't want to have that happen, but for textures, it's a great technique. This can be used as a foundation wash, which other shapes can be painted once it's dried. Now here we're going to paint a flat wash. I'm going to go with a turquoise, and on this one we're going to add saran wrap or plastic wrap. See here? And this will create some really fun designs. And then what I'm going to do is actually put a weight on top of it and let it dry. I'm going to set this on it. Now when your paper has dried, you can take it off, and you can see here that it's created a really fun texture for us, which I would love for a foliage or even in the water. It's a great technique, and you can decide what you want to use it for. Then we're going to, on this one, use a couple of other items like a sponge and feathers. Add your paint. I'll take a damp sponge. You don't want it wet, but you don't want it dry either. Touch it, and you can have different kinds of sponges. It'll soak up some of your paint. You can also take a palette knife and create lines. When the paint is still wet, it'll create a dark line. If you wait for the paint to dry a little bit more, you will actually get more of a white line. So depending on what kind of effect you want, whether you want them dark lines or white, depends on when you would do it in your paper. Here it was wet, here it was more dry. Don't wait till it's completely dry. You want it still a little damp so the shine is just off. And here we still have shine. So it's great for little twigs and branches that you want in your foliage, for grasses, things like that. Okay, now we're gonna go over here and we are going to rub off our masking fluid to see the texture we created. You can use your fingers, you can use an eraser to rub off your masking fluid. Because it's a small area, I'm just using my fingers. If you have a larger area, I would use an eraser or use a very dry paper towel or cloth so you don't burn your fingers with the friction. Here you can see we have a lovely pattern. And the other thing, we have a feather here. That down, and again you would put a weight on it. So now that our paint is dry up here, you want to make sure it is all the way dry before you take off your salt, or you will rub your paint into your paper and you don't want to do that. So it's nice and dry, and you're just going to rub it away, and you will get a little bit of a shiny look depending on the angle you look at your painting because of the crystals in your salt. As you can see, it leaves a bunch of little snowflakes, which would be fun for ice, for water, for sand, for trees or foliage. Make sure you get all the salt off. And here we will take off our feather that it's dried. So you get a little bit of an effect. You can try it with different feathers, try it for different lengths of time. I think I see a little bit here of the feather. You could even do leaves. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your favorite technique was, and if I missed any techniques that you have thought of or that you have played around with. I would love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you would like to see more reviews and tutorials, you can go up here, and if you would like to see more speed paintings, you can check out these over here. Don't forget to subscribe and click that bell so you can be notified when I create a video on how to use your textures in a painting of your own. And as always, keep on painting!